Folks, the Miami Heat may be dangerous this season, and I'll explain why, and it has to do with their offense. This is the Heat Report by Chat Sports. I am Nic Rohloff. Miami 1-1 through the first two games of the season, losing in Orlando in the opener 125-121, but then blowing out the Grizzlies on the road on Friday night 146-114. But the Heat have had a bottom 10 offense in the NBA in each of the last 5 seasons. But through the first two games, the Heat offensive stats are out of this world, and they're almost unbelievable for an Erik Spoelstra-led team. I'll explain why, but make sure you subscribe to the Heat Report for daily Heat content. We'll be live on Tuesday for Hornets Heat in Miami. But through the first two games of the season, Miami is averaging 133.5 points per game. That's third best in the NBA. But the part that is the most appalling is the pace Miami is playing at. Through two games, their pace is 112.5. That ranks first in the NBA. And I know it's a very small sample size and it's only the first 3-4 days of the season, but Miami has never been an up-tempo team. Speaking of, Erik Spoelstra has never been an up-tempo head coach. Ready for this statistic coming in from the Miami Herald? Not only has the Heat been amongst the 5 most slowest teams in the NBA in each of the past 6 seasons, but Miami has never finished the regular season as a top 15 team in pace under Erik Spoelstra in his 17 years as Miami Heat head coach. Listen to that. The Heat have never finished as a top 15 team in pace with Erik Spoelstra as their head coach. Yet through 2 games, they rank first, and they were inside the top 10 of pace in the NBA preseason. The players, Erik Spoelstra, all talked about it at training camp and in media day, how they want to be an up-tempo, fast team this season offensively, and it all starts with getting stops and getting out in transition. But we also saw Miami rank top 10 in pace last year in the preseason and then fall back into their normal bottom 5 pace in the regular season. Now, a lot of that may have to do with Jimmy Butler. And I love Jimmy. I think he's the 3rd best player in Heat history. But let's face the facts. Mid-30s, a little bit of an older style, and he plays very slow. He's deliberate. He works in the half court. If he is not getting out and running, well, then the rest of the team won't either, because why are they going to push the pace if they're not going to have a 5th player join them, right? It'd be 4 on 5. If you run the floor. But now with this younger team led by Jaquez, Bam, Jovic, Ware, Davion Mitchell, you are seeing much more fast-paced in the willingness to run out in transition after getting a rebound. And the part that makes this team so fascinating is that almost every single player, if they get the rebound, can bring the ball up. The only exception is Kel'el Ware. Jaquez can lead the break. Mitchell can. Powell can. Wiggins can. Jovic can. Bam can. The only player that gets PT for the squad that doesn't really have the confidence or ability to run in transition with the ball in his hands is Kel'el Ware. And that's fine. Big man, get the board, quick outlet, let's roll. Because this pace has really allowed Miami to get a ton of open looks and a ton of easy opportunities. Through 2 games, the Heat have the 8th best offensive rating in basketball, 118.7. They rank 7th in true shooting percentage at 62.2%, 7th in field goal percentage of 51.3%, and the most shocking stat, in my opinion, is actually their 3-point percentage. They're shooting 41.3% from beyond the arc through the first 2 games, which has caught me by surprise because with no Tyler Hero and then the loss of Duncan Robinson in free agency, I assumed Miami, losing their 2 best 3-point shooters, were going to struggle a little bit on the defensive end the 3-point end. Instead, they're actually excelling through 2 games this season. And before we continue, I want you to grade the Heat through 2 games. A, B, C, D, or F, how do you rank the Miami Heat through their first 2 games of the season? But as we look more into these stats here, it's actually unbelievable, and it's more shocking than anything, right? They are averaging 30 assists per game through the first 2 games, so 60 total assists. That's 5th best in the NBA. And I mentioned the willingness to play fast and how they are getting out in transition. Well, Miami is actually having 1.21 transition points per possession. So when they get out and run, they're scoring 1.21 points of the time. That's 11th best in the NBA and ranks in the 65th percentile. But here is the more fascinating part once again. They are actually averaging 40 points per game in transition. That is the third most in the NBA through the first 4 days of the year. So Miami is making a legit effort to get out in transition and to generate easy looks for themselves, and it's working at a high and efficient rate. This has allowed Miami to score 120 points in each of their last 2 games. We talked about in the preseason, faster pace, more up-tempo, that allows Miami to get more shots on goal, not to be like a soccer or hockey guy, but it allows them more room for error. It does, because think about this, folks. If you are playing slow tempo and missing a lot of shots, well, you're giving yourself not a lot of room for error, because if you're inefficient and don't have a lot of possessions, well, you're not going to be able to score. But if you play up tempo, you give yourself a ton of looks, even if you don't have a ton of easy looks, or a ton of makes, and you're not shooting super efficient from the field, you're giving yourself so many opportunities that it will ultimately make up for it. And I think we've seen the Heat thrive on that through the first couple games of the season. Like, I also think the balanced scoring attack Miami has is really beneficial. I'm comparing this team to the Indiana Pacers. They don't have a superstar. You can maybe consider Halliburton a star or superstar. Miami certainly doesn't have that. They have a collection of good basketball players that are interchangeable. We saw the Pacers be able to have so much success in the last 2 postseasons sharing the ball, playing quick. It could be anyone on any given night, whether it's Tyrese Halliburton, Siakam, Miles Turner, Nembhard, Nesmith. And through 2 games, Miami is very, very similar. In the first game of the season, Norman Powell led the team in scoring with 28 points. Davion Mitchell had 16, Bam had 15, Wiggins had 18, with a pair of players off the bench in Jaquez and Fontecchio having 13 apiece. Well, in game 2, you saw a different collection of leading scorers. Leading scorer in the game was Bam Adebayo, who got off to a hot start. He had 24 points. But then you see Nikola Jovic off the bench with 20. Kel'el Ware in the starting lineup with 19 points and 9 boards. And then you see the familiar faces off the bench, Jaquez with 17 and Fontecchio with 14. So, it just goes to the point where it's going to be difficult to defend the Miami Heat every single night, because they have so many different players that can go off. One day, Wiggins might drop 30. The next day, Powell might go nuclear and have 5 threes and score 25, 30 points. The next day, it's going to be Jaquez off the bench. Maybe then it's the young front court of Bam, Ware, and Jovic. I've seen some people talk about it, that the Heat apparently didn't call a play in the first half of that game against the Grizzlies. They are just having the success because they're able to get stops defensively, get out in transition, and play a free-flowing offense. And if they're able to do that consistently, it's going to be difficult for teams to game plan and script defensive schemes and kind of sets at them. Because if Miami's not running sets, well, how are you going to stop them? And if they all know, and everybody has their own basic offensive scheme that they implement, and they have what they call motion, and it's all technical. But when you get into it and you have your base principles offensively, and you don't have to run sets because everybody knows, all right, we're going to get a stop, we're going to run out in transition, we're going to move the ball, and if nothing's there immediately, we know what to fall back into and make some plays. Well, then it's going to be hard to defend. And I think this Heat team could be dangerous. The Grizzlies are I think, below average team in the NBA this year. The Magic are an above average team. So they beat the below average team. They lost to the above average team, both on the road. I think we'll see more tests as the year goes on and on. This Sunday against the New York Knicks will be a fascinating matchup. The best team projected in the Eastern Conference. They beat the Celtics and Cavs at home early in the season. But I truly do believe the Miami Heat can be a dangerous team, and they will be threatening. I think they will be a playoff team. I'm trying not to overreact here, but when you watch the offense, the Heat have never had an offense like this. And if they're able to continue to put together games with this type of offensive output, you will only see this team get better. And this is without Tyler Hero. It's an interesting discussion on if Tyler is going to come back and hinder the offense, because it's well, this guy's used to kind of isolating, slow tempo, and kind of being a ball stopper, if you will, at times. Well, is he going to bring that old mentality into today in this game? Or is he going to integrate himself just like everybody else is and play up-tempo, share the ball, and move? If he does that, well, then this offense will just be elevated. But if he goes back to his old ways, it could be dicey. And I don't want to throw shade at Jimmy because I love him, but his play style may have limited Miami's ceiling offensively. Now, the Heat are better off with Jimmy Butler. I don't want that to be misconstrued. He is one of the top players in the NBA. And you throw him on this team with everybody else that the Heat already have, they would be solid. Just like switch Wiggins and Butler, and this team could easily contend in the Eastern Conference. But it might positively impact the offense is what I'm trying to say here. But maybe not the ceiling. I'll do it for today's show. I wanted to go through some of the offensive stats as the Heat have completed 2 games. Appreciate everybody for watching. Go follow me on Twitter at Nic_Rohloff and subscribe to the Heat Report as we continue to bring you daily content. We'll be live next on Tuesday for Heat Hornets. Heat play the Knicks on Sunday evening, so we'll have to see how that game ultimately goes. But appreciate everybody. See you the next time. Go Heat.